Welcome to Cursed TV, where shadows whisper and the night comes alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from. Turn off the lights, relax, and let the stories begin. Story 1. Gran loves mirrors, but she said we need to cover all of them in the house every night. Mirrors are fine things in the daylight, she told me once, pulling a heavy black drape over the vanity in my bedroom. But mirrors are so close to windows, little bird, and at night they get even closer. I stopped brushing my teeth as Gran moved to cover the bathroom mirror. What's so bad about windows? I don't know about you, darling, but I don't think I want people looking in at me when it's dark and I can't see them back. Besides, if mirrors are windows, well, any window is a door if you push hard enough. She clicked her teeth and laughed in her sing-song way. I shivered as she finished taping up the thick tarp across the glass. If I looked long enough at night, could I see through the mirror? If I pushed, would it open? I stared so hard into the black cloth, I imagined I could see the threads as they slithered around each other. Was that a glint of silver under the material? The smallest rip in the fabric? Closer. Was that my reflection looking back, the barest suggestion of an eye? I blinked. It didn't. Come to bed, little bird, Gran said, holding out her hand. I'll tell you another story. With a final glance over my shoulder at the covered mirror, I followed. In the winter, we were never cold. That was nice. I'm not sure what it was about Gran's house, but the chill never managed to slip in, even on days when the wind came calling against the old walls. I can only remember being cold once, as I walked past a covered mirror in the kitchen. Gran asked me to get her some water. As I moved by the mirror, I noticed the black material over the glass ripple. There was a coolness on the other side. I leaned in close, probably closer than I should have, and I thought I could hear bells, maybe even smell snow. I missed the snow. Gran called out asking if I was having a hard time finding the water. I hurried on. In the spring, I can hear the rain dancing on the roof as I help Gran cover the mirrors. I can feel the sun setting, even if I can't see it. I miss the sun, I told Gran. The rain will stop eventually. Can I go out when it does? Gran smiled, the wrinkles in her face spreading out like ripples in a pond. We'll see, little bird. We were at the big mirror in the hallway, the fancy one with all of the vines and ships and animals carved into the frame. Gran called it scrimshaw. I thought that was a funny word. Out of tape, Gran muttered. Stay here and face the wall, okay? I'll be right back. She moved away, limping a little. I obeyed. The mirror behind me was mostly covered anyway, a long curve of shining glass that stretched nearly the entire length of the hall. I didn't turn around, I promise, but while I stood there, I was so sure I could smell flowers. My hair stirred in a breeze that wasn't there a moment before, and I felt sunshine? Something warm on my neck. Then Gran was back, biting off a strip of rubbery tape and tucking the mirror away safely into the dark. She left for the bedroom and I followed. I felt another shiver using my spine as a ladder. If the smell of flowers could come through a mirror, what else could? A voice? A hand? Teeth? In the summer, you could feel the warmth outside if you touched the walls where they were thinnest, but inside it stayed cool and dim. Gran was sleeping a lot. Most days she'd only wake up long enough to uncover the mirrors in the morning, then to hide them again at night. I asked her once why she even bothered to unwrap the glass during the day. How else would I see the world? Gran snapped. Some days she was so tired she'd ask me to uncover the mirrors in the morning. A few times she even trusted me to wrap them up in the evening. I never peeked, not until the night I heard someone saying my name from the other side. You, Laura, I miss you every day. The voice was coming from under one of the mirrors I'd already covered. My hand was shaking so hard, I almost pulled the entire piece of fabric off as I lifted the corner. Instead of my reflection, I was looking into a bedroom. It wasn't like my bedroom in Gran's house. This place was colorful. There were posters on the wall, and the bed even had a blanket. The sheets looked clean. I missed that. There was a girl in the room, kneeling at the foot of the bed. Her hands were clasped and her head was down. Wherever she is, even if she's with you, please take care of her. Amen. The girl looked up, and then her eyes snapped to mine. I must have made a noise, a gasp, something. She looked so familiar. Dark hair and eyes. She was like an older version of my reflection. "Assist, what are you doing?" Gran asked from behind me. I jerked away from the mirror. The last thing I saw from the bedroom was the terrified girl staring back. It was an accident. I thought I heard my name. Gran put one gentle hand around my cheek, long fingers coming around to the other side. "Little bird, don't worry. You'll forget your name soon enough, and it won't bother you any longer." Gran turned and began to limp down the hall, shoulders brushing against the ceiling. "Tape the cover back and come lay down." I made a decision that night as I lay next to Gran. It was awful, sleeping next to her, cold. Her breath always smelled like meat that was left out too long. Gran was so thin, all bones, and her skin was hard enough to leave scrapes on me when she pulled me tightly in her sleep. There was no comfort in her, no warmth. I missed home the most on those nights. The longer I stayed with Gran, the more my memory began to dry up. I knew she was right. Eventually, even my name would be gone. But for at least a little longer, I remember. I remember my home, my parents. I remember playing in the yard under the willow, weaving crowns of daisies in the spring, and I remember my older sister playing with me, even if I can't recall her name. I remember. I've tried going back through the mirror, but it doesn't seem to work from this end. Or maybe it does, but only Gran can make it work. There's nothing to write with anywhere in the house. The mirrors, though, they fog up, and I can draw with my finger in the blur I create on the glass. It's taken me all night to write this message out one breath at a time. The space is massive, at least on this side, but I've still used every inch and have so much left I want to say. I love you, sis. I hope you find this in the morning. Maybe it'll fade, but if you get close enough, if you happen to breathe on your side of the mirror, if you do see this, please know I'm thinking of you and Mom and Dad. I miss you all more than anything, Gran. I don't think Gran will ever bring me back. She told me before that she wants me to be like her. I don't want to be like Gran, but I already feel myself changing, stretching. I'm scared. Tonight, though, at least for tonight, I'm still me. I'm still Laura. I love you. I can hear Gran moving, waking up. If she catches me, goodbye. Tell Mom and Dad, well, maybe don't tell them. I thought about waking you up, but I didn't want to scare you. I'll watch you. For as long as I can. Love, Laura. I used to think my room was haunted when I was a girl. My sister disappeared one summer, but I always felt that she was with me. Once I even thought I saw her looking at me from my vanity's mirror. When I was 13, I found the above story scrawled backward across that same mirror. Mom and Dad thought I did it myself. They got upset. Now that I'm older, I can understand why. It scared me then, so I never told anyone else. I kept looking for any sign of Laura in the mirror, but never saw her again. Not until last night. I saw something in the mirror in my daughter's bedroom. It might have been my sister, once, long ago. The thing appeared familiar and watched my daughter sleeping. When I blinked, it was gone. I'm taking all of the mirrors out of the house today. I miss my sister, Laura, with all of my heart. But I never want to see her again. Story 2. No, mirrors are not a paranormal portal to a dark dimension. They're mirrors. They reflect light. The issue is when you think you're looking into a mirror that isn't really there. The mirrors in your home? Probably fine. Dirty mirrors with smudges on? Probably fine. Mirror on a wall where you know what's on the other side? Definitely fine. But if you see a clean mirror in public on a wall that you can't get behind, stay away from it. Do not look at it. Do not look at the thing pretending to be you. That is not you. I can't say for certain who is orchestrating this, nor do I know why businesses and public bathrooms are agreeing to it. But more and more establishments are building identical bathrooms next to existing ones. I know this because I am one of the contractors who keeps being hired for this. I have built 3 bathrooms so far, each of which we were told to pay meticulous attention to detail and to build an exact mirror image of an existing bathroom. At first, it didn't seem too strange. The places probably just needed space for more toilets. Perhaps they were getting a lot of customers. The first job was for a generic public restroom in my local town center. The second job was in a restaurant a couple of miles away. The third was for the university of a neighboring city. The fact that each of these separate and very different locations had the exact same request was unsettling. But it was money. Why wouldn't we accept? A few days into the third contract, I was in my local town center, purchasing some supplies for the job. I needed to use the bathroom, so I made my way to the public ones. They're a little hidden through an alleyway, the type you definitely wouldn't use at night. When I got there, I noticed that the bathroom I had helped build was simply not there. They had filled the doorway back in with bricks and cement. It was as if it was never there. I figured they had realized that having two identical bathrooms was silly. They had probably got some people in the knock down the shared wall between them to turn it into one larger bathroom facility. But no, once I was standing inside, it was the exact same size as before. The shared wall, the one with the mirror across, was still there. They had hardly even cleaned the place up. It was all as filthy as ever. All except for the mirror. The mirror was crystal clear. It didn't make sense. This would indicate a terrible, terrible job had been done. However, we had been paid on time and didn't receive any complaints. As far as my team and I are aware, we did everything perfectly fine. I couldn't understand why they would hide it away. But it wasn't my job to understand. We got paid, and it's up to the client what they do with the work once we leave. We collect 50% of the payment up front and the other 50% when completed. Once we were done with the third contract, we had to chase up with the restaurant. They still had not paid us the second half and hadn't even been in contact to tell us why. I made my way down the same day we completed the university bathroom. The restaurant wasn't too busy, as it's not a very popular place. I had been surprised when they needed double the bathroom capacity. As I made my way up to the counter, I noticed that the new restroom we had built was not labeled as such. The door was still there. They had not hidden it like the public restroom, but a sign on it read "Supply Closet, Staff Only." Nobody was at the counter yet. No staff were in sight, just two customers who weren't even paying me any attention. So I pushed the door gently open, and it was not a supply closet. It was the bathroom we had built. I stepped in slowly. Something about the whole situation felt odd. This was the second place trying to hide our work. As I stepped into the center of the room and looked towards the mirror, I noticed no reflection. I stepped slowly towards the sinks and stood in front of them, staring. It was as if I was waiting to see myself. But I wasn't there. I reached out, and my hand went right through. There was no mirror here at all. This was a cutout into the next room. For some reason, I felt I had to prove that to myself as I climbed through into the original bathroom and stood facing away from the mirror. My only explanation was, again, perhaps that they decided to knock down the shared wall to simply expand the room. I figured they must only be halfway finished. This explanation was short-lived as I turned back around and saw my reflection looking back at me. By this point, confused was an understatement. I wasn't scared either. I was unsettled, but more than anything, I just didn't understand what was going on. I reached out and sure enough, my hand met my reflection. At this point, I began to wonder whether the mirror was slide away for any reason, like a secret passage between the rooms. That was until I realized my hand hadn't felt the cold touch of a mirror's surface, but the warm and soft feeling of another person's hand. My face dropped. My eyes glazed over with fear. I don't know how terrified I looked, because my reflection had stopped copying me. He smiled, his hand clasped around mine as I tried to pull away. Our fingers were interlocked, as he began to slowly climb through. I truly think I'd have been done for, had it not been for the door swinging open at that point. "Oh hey, I thought I saw you come in. You're here because we didn't pay you the other half, right?" My reflection returned to normal, and I backed away from the mirror. My heart was beating out of my chest, and I couldn't take my gaze off myself. "You like the mirror?" I was able to look at him as he continued to speak to me. "We didn't want the new bathroom. I can't really get into details about why we got it. We were forced to and threatened by a third party. They even gave us the money to pay you. Maybe it's some legal loophole for them to get a tax write-off somehow. I won't pretend to understand it." I was able to find words somewhere in my head. "So, you have the money?" "Well, that's the thing. We were already in debt. Business hasn't been great. We've spent it all. but we will get you the money, I promise. It's okay, keep it. I walked out of there without turning back, despite being pretty sure I could hear the manager shouting me. I do not believe these things in the mirrors to be human. I don't know how, I don't know why, but someone is trying extremely hard to allow these to mimic us without being noticed. Right there, in front of your eyes, something pretending to be you, and you wouldn't even bat an eye. For whatever reason, it is important that they be allowed to copy people, and this is the best that they could come up with. So, next time you find yourself in front of a spotlessly clean mirror, don't touch it. They don't like to be noticed. Story. Did you ever stare into a mirror for a long period of time? I don't mean for a few minutes, not to check out your body, but for a truly long time. Try, for example, if you will, staring at your own face. At the beginning, it might be normal. You might laugh because it feels silly. Soon, however, things will turn weird. At first, the humor of it will go away. You might even get bored. But if you stick to it, things will eventually become creepy. I started doing it after I read about certain urban legends online. When I first tried it, I couldn't do it for long. Seeing my dumb face in the bathroom every morning was hard enough, but staring at it for longer than necessary was a chore. The more I tried, though, the more I got used to it. I'd sit down in front of my bathroom mirror and stare at myself. I told myself more than once that this was stupid, ridiculous even, but I liked creepy stuff, and I enjoyed scaring myself. So I stuck with it. It was one of the weirdest experiences I ever had. I laughed, I groaned, I yawned, but before long I started to study the intricate landscape of my face more closely. Every once in a while, I stared deeply into my own eyes, scanning my pupils and my irises. Before long, I got the feeling that something was changing. I began wondering if I was the one staring at my reflection, or if it was the other way around. What if it was the other way around? What if that person in the mirror wasn't truly me? And then, for the blink of an eye, I thought I saw my reflection wink at me. I scrambled back in shock, cursing at it before I started laughing. Jesus Christ, this is stupid. I cursed at myself and the fear that had washed over me. Still, when I looked at the mirror again, at my reflection, I wondered if it had all been my imagination or if something had actually happened. I stepped up to the mirror again, pushed myself closer, and stared right into my reflection's eyes. Did you just wink at me? Of course, I didn't get an answer. No, all I got was my reflection mimicking my every move. His lips moved when mine did. He blinked when I did, and he laughed as stupid as me. No, it had been nothing but my overactive imagination. But then, in that moment, my eyes grew wide. My reflection did the same, but I didn't care about it anymore. My attention was drawn to a weird little object behind me. Resting on the bathroom floor behind me was a small black cube. What the hell, I wondered, as I brought my face closer to the mirror. Why's there? My thoughts stopped because the moment I turned around, it was gone. I cursed, telling myself I was still imagining things and that my brain was acting up, but when I turned back to the mirror, I saw it again. It was right there, on the bathroom floor, close to the wall. I pushed my face closer to get a better look at it, only to block it out. When I turned around, though, there was still nothing there. All right, what the fuck? Slowly but steadily, I moved back, away from the mirror. I watched as I pushed myself against the bathroom wall, right next to the black cube. Then I reached out to it with my foot, bringing it closer towards the object. In reality, nothing happened. I didn't feel the sensation of touching something. My reflection, however, began pushing the black cube to the right. This was the weirdest thing ever. It had to be some sort of optical illusion. There was no way any of this was real. Well, of course it wasn't real. It was only happening inside the damned mirror. With that, I told myself to forget it and go to bed. It was getting late, and I'd have to get up early tomorrow morning. But how do you ignore something as strange and fascinating as what was happening here? Of course I was lying to myself, and of course I couldn't just forget about it. And so I got closer to the object again. Or, to say it better, I brought my reflection closer to it. When I leaned down, however, I wasn't able to make it out anymore. My head, or better, my eyes, was too low to make out the reflection of the bathroom floor anymore. I cursed, but got an idea. I stepped up to the mirror, making sure the cube was still there, and took it down. Then I propped it up against the cupboard below the sink and turned it until I could make out the black cube again. Finally, I went back to the wall. When I was there, I reached out for it once more, this time with my hand. Once more, I couldn't feel a thing, but I watched as my reflection's fingers got closer and closer before they eventually made contact with the cube. I watched in stunned fascination as my reflection's fingers brushed against it. A cold shower went down my spine. What the hell was this? Was this really just an optical illusion? Before long, I had a rough idea of the cube's dimensions. Each side was about 1.5 inches. Then, with the most delicate of movements, I made my reflection close its hand around it. Then I lifted my hand. I watched as my reflection held it in its hand. For a moment, it almost slipped from my hand before I got a better hold of it. This was the strangest sensation. I had no feeling for it, and yet I was holding something. Or better, my reflection was holding it. With a few careful steps, my eyes glued to the mirror, I brought it closer towards it. I carefully placed it in front of the mirror and began studying it. It was nothing but a solid black cube. I stared at it from all dimensions, leaning left and right, standing up and laying down. Just what the hell was this thing? Then I brought my finger against it again, this time not delicately. Instead, I pushed it closer to the mirror. For a moment, I wondered what would happen if I kept it up. The thought of it sliding through the mirror's surface appeared in my mind. I laughed, calling myself an idiot, telling myself again that this had to be some sort of optical illusion. And of course, it didn't slide through. Instead, it was pressed against the mirror, hard and slightly crooked together. At that moment, I saw that its top was slightly pushed upward. Did it mean that I could open it? Almost in a trance, I reached out with my other hand, my left hand. I couldn't help but curse in frustration as I tried to make sense of the cube's dimensions and my movements being flipped. Finally, after 2 futile tries, I managed to push my fingernail into the small crack. Then I delicately began pushing it upward. It took me another few tries before I succeeded in opening it. Where I was, however, I couldn't see a damn thing. So I stood up, brought my face close to the mirror, and stared down at it. That's when I noticed that there was something strange and whitish inside of it. My hand went forward again, getting a hold of it to lift it upwards so I could get a better look at it. I closed my hand around the now open cube and lifted it, bringing the opening closer to the mirror. At first I saw only white, but then I made out delicate red lines in it, saw its round form. A moment later, whatever was inside the cube started moving and turning. I watched in stunned horror, and after a few seconds, I stared at an eyeball. I screamed up in shock and disgust, scrambling away from the mirror and shaking my hand as if something had gotten a hold of it. Inside the mirror, the black cube crashed to the floor. It bounced once, twice before it came to a rest. The eyeball, however, rolled out of it. From where I was, I watched as it rolled closer to the mirror. I expected it to hit the surface, to bounce back, but it rolled on. My eyes grew wide in shock and disbelief as the eyeball passed through the mirror's surface. It rolled on and came to a rest right in front of me. I cringed back, but I couldn't stop staring at it. This thing, this eyeball, it couldn't exist, but here it was. And as I sat there, slumped down on the bathroom floor, I couldn't stop staring at it. And as I stared at it, it also stared at me, and with each passing moment, I felt it staring deeper and deeper into my eyes. Story 4. It was just one of those stupid internet things, like an urban legend or creepypasta ritual or something. Except this one had some merit to it. There was an actual study, a scientific explanation, some genuine evidence behind it. It wasn't some supernatural phenomena. It was your brain, your very own wonderful mind, just fucking with you. I think that's the part that intrigued me the most. The chance to experience something truly disturbing, all the while knowing that it was merely a visual illusion. For those of you who have never heard of the illusion, it's pretty simple. All you need is a dimly lit room, a chair, and a mirror. The chair should be placed approximately 15 inches from the mirror, and the light, preferably a dim lamp with a bulb no stronger than 25 watts, should be behind the chair. All you have to do is sit down, stare at your own reflected face, and within a minute or so, you should start noticing the bizarre face illusion. According to the study, there's a whole mixed bag of freaky shit you can expect to see. Deformations in your own face, your parents' faces with changed traits, an unknown person's face, animal faces, even monstrous demonic things. At the time, I wasn't sure what I saw, but it fucked me up good. It took a while before I realized anything had happened at all. I guess maybe the changes were so gradual, so vague, that my eyes couldn't quite catch what was going on. But when I did notice, in that indescribable moment of horror, I instinctively kicked the mirror, fell back in my chair, and knocked over the lamp. The mirror fell on top of me, the lamp broke, and I was flailing on the floor, screaming hysterically. It took me hours to calm down, but I couldn't fathom why. I didn't even remember what I saw. My reflected face had been all shadowy and blurry, only vaguely familiar, kind of like a fuzzy memory. Then all of a sudden I must have seen something bad, something so shocking that my fight or flight instinct kicked in, so horrible that my mind locked the memory of it away. Whatever it was, I swore I'd never do it again. I'd tried it, it fucked me up, and I was ready to just move on from there. Find something else, something safer. Maybe spend a night in a haunted house or something. Get my adrenaline rush from somewhere else than the depths of my own twisted subconscious. I went to work the next day feeling like shit. I guess we all feel that way about our jobs to some extent, but this was something else. Some deep, hidden anxiety. A veiled sensation of dread or something. But after a couple of calls from some really obnoxious clients, it all sort of faded away. Replaced instead by a sweet and familiar discontempt for humankind as a whole. At lunch, I sat down with Brandon and Joy, the office couple. They were decent people, I guess, a bit too cheery for my taste, but I didn't really mind. After a dozen or so less than satisfying conversations with unbelievably toxic clients, I could even use some cheery. "You okay, Ken?" Joy asked cheerily. "You look a little worse for the wear." "He does, doesn't he?" Brandon chimed in. "Rough night, buddy?" I feigned a smile and nodded. "Yeah, I'm good," I lied. "Just, Mondays." I don't exactly know what happened next. I vaguely remember Brandon and Joy talking about curtains, shoes, shelves, something boring. I guess must have zoned out at some point, because the next thing I remember is my half-full glass of milk shattering on the floor. I instantly snapped out of my trance and started apologizing profusely, awkwardly bending down to collect the shards. "I'm sorry. I can be so clumsy," I think I muttered as I sat back up, placing the remnants of the broken glass on my empty plate. Brandon and Joy didn't say anything. They were sitting perfectly still, eerily still, staring at me in wide-eyed shock, or fear, or both. "Jesus Christ, Ken," Joy stammered incoherently. "Don't move. Brandon, we need to get you to the hospital," Brandon yelled. "Right now." I was confused, my gaze darting back and forth between the two of them. They looked genuinely upset, scared even, and I couldn't for the life of me understand why. "What's wrong?" I asked, blood now pouring out of my mouth. I can't say how I didn't notice before, but at that moment, I became painfully aware. I could feel the razor-sharp shard with the tip of my tongue, a long, thin piece of glass sticking through my right cheek. I gently pulled at it, resulting in the jagged edges slowly cutting through even more of my flesh. "Is not so bad," I mumbled. "Just a flesh wound." Brandon and Joy freaked out, throwing chairs aside and yelling hysterically at each other. Brandon ran back and forth, like he didn't quite know what he was doing. "Get the car!" Joy just kept shouting at him. She was awkwardly trying to lift me up, tugging violently at my shirt. It was white when I sat down, I remember thinking. Now it was a deep shade of red. At some point, I just stood up and started walking, a frantic Joy at my side, trying her very best to steer me in the direction of the car. I tried to calm her down, smiling reassuringly when she asked me if I was okay, but it didn't really seem to help. The drive to the hospital was quiet and peaceful. Brandon and Joy were probably scared senseless, and I just found myself thinking about what had happened. There was no way it was an accident. Like, how? Did I bend down and scrape my face against the floor? No, there was only one explanation that made any sense. I must have stabbed myself. But I couldn't remember doing it. Couldn't remember anything. Whatever really happened, Brandon, Joy, and the doctors treated it like it was some freak accident. They didn't ask any questions, just did their best to comfort me and patch me up. There were a lot of stitches. Can't remember how many. There'd be a scar, though, they told me. Couldn't be helped, apparently. They kept me in the hospital overnight. I guess they wanted to keep an eye on me or something. Brandon and Joy assured me they'd pick me up first thing in the morning. I'd be fine, they said. I just shrugged and smiled. I would have thanked them, but I had a hard time moving my mouth. I slept fairly undisturbed. There were some weird dreams, but nothing too extreme, and I woke up in a rather dazed state, staring at a bowl of cereal neatly placed on a tray next to my bed. I was quite famished, so I immediately emptied it, munching happily on the squishy contents of it. Squishy. Sure, in retrospect it doesn't sound right at all. It didn't taste right either. That's the weirdest part, I think. I mean, I was munching away happily, all the while thinking this shit tastes horrible. And the texture of it, I don't know, it was like chewing on a leathery egg filled with vile, rotten liquid. But I didn't stop, not until the nurse came in, dropped her tray, and started screaming bloody murder. I instinctively spat it out. It sort of rolled unsteadily on the floor for a while, before settling rather poignantly by the feet of the hysterical nurse. A half-chewed human eyeball. My half-chewed eyeball. I don't know if I recognized it, or if it was the pain, or the fact that I was half-blind that tipped me off, but as soon as the realization hit me, I completely lost it, and all these strange, erratic thoughts started going through my head. How did it happen? Why did I eat my own eyeball? What did it taste like? Was it as bad as pineapple on pizza? Would I eat it again given the opportunity? The nurse wouldn't stop screaming. I couldn't stop screaming. I stumbled down from my bed, backing away from the nurse and the eyeball rapidly. It was staring right at me, judging me, loathing me, hating me. It was the last thing I saw before I lost balance and tumbled clumsily out of the open window. My memory is a bit hazy, I'll admit, but I remember the ground coming closer and closer and the all-consuming feeling of this is it. This is where I die. This is how I die. Half naked in the hospital parking lot, missing my right eyeball. What would my epitaph say? He seemed perfectly normal until he dug out his eyeball and ate it. I lost consciousness when my head struck a fence about halfway down. That's what saved me, apparently. Broke the fall. Only messed me up, didn't kill me. I suppose I should be thankful. All in all, I was lucky. Just a dislocated jaw, a broken arm, a light concussion, and some missing teeth. 16 missing teeth, all on the right side. I was a mess, a fucking monster. I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror, couldn't stand the thought of it. I could see it in their eyes, the loathing, the disgust, the repulsion. But I knew I had to do it eventually, so I did. All you need is a mirror, a chair, and a dim lamp. Just sit down and stare at your reflected face. After a minute or so, you'll start seeing it. See the illusion. Unless it isn't an illusion, then you'll just see the truth. I erupted in what I can only describe as a maniacal laughter, my disfigured, monstrous visage twisting horribly in masochistic insanity as the reflection slowly started changing. I kept laughing, couldn't stop laughing. The pain was unbearable. My stitches tore, blood pouring into my horribly damaged mouth. Long after my reflection changed to a terrified, wide-eyed, shocked version of my once handsome self, I kept laughing. Only after he disappeared, taking the mirror with him, could I finally stop. Story 5. We've all heard the stories before. Don't chant Bloody Mary in a dark room in front of a mirror. Don't look at mirrors as you pass them. Cover the mirrors at night, because it's a portal. As a frequent nosleep user, even being an atheist who doesn't believe in the paranormal, I don't dare fuck with the dark or mirrors in dark rooms. Haven't you ever had that feeling of walking to your bathroom with all the lights off in the house? You know the feeling of being watched, of something being there with you, something that just makes you pick up the pace to reach your destination. Today I made the worst mistake possible. If you own an iPhone, please turn off night mode. For those of you who own newer generation iPhones, we all know that the camera has this brand new feature. If you take a picture in the dark night mode, automatically lightens the picture up, making clear whatever you can't see, illuminating dark rooms without having to use the flash. Back to my situation, it's late, I can't sleep, and I have a very early shift in the morning. Of course, regardless of exhaustion, I catch myself not being able to sleep, texting my girl late into the evening. We've all been here before. It's 2 in the morning, texting your SO, and of course, here comes the frisky texts. Rather, I say risky pictures. Listen, I would love to be anything rather than awake, but when cakes blow up, my notifications sleep is no longer an option. Being the gentleman that I am, I decide that I'm going to go ahead and send something back. As I'm racing to the bathroom to take a picture in front of the mirror, that feeling follows me. A presence merely inches away from my back. On my heels, just following me, yet it never fully grasps me. As I finally get to the bathroom, phone in hand, camera app in tow, it happened. I was about to turn on the lights. I had my phone positioned. I was ready to take a photo of my average-looking male body. Before I can even turn on the lights, my photo accidentally takes the picture. Before I can even react to the accidental snapshot, the darkened photo starts to light up. Slowly, I can see the outline of my body, my chest hair, my belly button, my shoulders, yet something else catches my eye. Right above my shoulder, next to my face, I see it. Literally, with the biggest chill to ever run down my spine, I spot it. Clear as day, it's a hand reaching for my shoulder. I stayed motionless for what felt like days, thinking there must be a glitch. Of course, I wished to believe it was a glitch. Of course, I made myself believe it was a camera error. And of course, I made an even worse decision. In the darkness, I took one more picture to prove my doubts right. I'm just seeing things. There's nothing behind me, I reassured myself. Snap! I take the picture. The picture starts to become clear, even slower than the first time. Again, chest hair, my belly button, my shoulders, my face, another face. I literally see another face right next to mine. I don't even want to describe it. It didn't even look human. Small eyes covered in black, a smile from ear to ear, random missing teeth, scars going up and down a short yet abnormally wide head. And this time, instead of reaching for my shoulder, the hand was touching me. I ran as quick as I could for my bed. Instead of feeling a presence on my heels, I felt it on me. A deep chill, fingernails clawing into me. Even now, laying in my bed with a blanket over me, I can feel a cold breath constantly over my shoulder. I beg of you, do not commit the same mistakes I made. For as long as human beings have been around, the darkness has always been an enemy. Fear of the dark is etched into our DNA. Now I know why. The scary stories in the dark, the Bloody Marys, the guttural fear. There is something watching me and you in the dark right now. Your shadow in the dark. It follows you at all times, and it wants to be noticed. I fear I don't have any time left, but you still do. Turn off night mode, delete the camera app, don't keep mirrors in the house, keep all the lights on in your apartment. My darkness shadow is pulling on my covers. The darkness waits for me, it whispers. Don't let it consume you. Story 6. I work in a 7-Eleven. Nothing fancy, but it gets me by while I go to school. I have to deal with my fair share of problems when I work the night shift. Homeless people, drunk people, and that one guy that gives off serial killer vibes. Usually I spend majority of my shift watching YouTube shorts on my phone, but recently I've been daydreaming a lot. I'm overweight and poor, so ironically, all of my daydreams are about me being fit and rich. They always end really abruptly though. I guess I might be a little too good at manifestation because that's exactly what I saw when I looked in the mirror at the work last night. It was 3:23 a.m., and I had about 2 more hours till my shift was over. I drank a bit too much Red Bull and used the restroom at work, which I try to never do. As I opened the door and walked into the cramped one toilet and sink restroom, I was shocked at what I saw in the mirror. It was me, but I was buff. The background was exactly the same as mine, except it had slightly darker lighting. I was even more surprised when he winked at me and said, "What's going on, bro? How was this possible? And how was my reflection talking to me?" Yo, I know you think this is a bit weird, but let me explain. I found this book with a bunch of pagan rituals in when I snorted a bunch of coke in an abandoned library. It just called my name for some reason, and I couldn't put it down. It was written that mirrors are portals that can be activated to reach alternate universes and how to activate them. Judging by the look of you, this alternate universe must suck. Mine's the best so far. He seems to be talking very fast, almost as if he was in a hurry. Maybe he was just really high on drugs. I replied, I'm completely sober right now, but this is real, right? Hold up 3 fingers so I know you're real. My alternate reflection quickly held up 3 fingers. I'm real, bro, don't worry, but I want to run something by you. Go for it, I replied. Not gonna lie, your life looks pretty trash. I mean, we're probably the same age, but I make way more money and look way better than you. Why don't we switch places for a bit, and you can live my life while I make yours better? We just do a quick switch for a month or 2, and then we switch back. Honestly, it seemed like a pretty sweet deal. I would get a chance to live the life I wanted, and my life would become better when I came back. But something was off. Why would a guy with such a great life want to switch and make my life better? I asked my reflection. I just want to help the versions of me that don't have it as good. Nothing wrong with helping yourself, right? I mean, he did have a point. There isn't anything wrong with helping yourself. Listen up, though. I'm a take action kind of guy, so if you don't decide right now, I'm just gonna go find a different mirror. It's now or never, bro. I didn't have a second thought in my mind. Let's do it. A smirk appeared on his face. Cool, let me just do the ritual thingy real quick. He reached into his pocket to pull out a piece of paper with weird drawings and a small pocket knife. He opened the paper, laid it over the sink, and proceeded to cut his hand with the knife. As the blood began to pour from his palm, he began to draw a pattern with the blood and recite some ancient language, but it didn't sound like his voice, it sounds like a demon. I felt a strong pressure grow in the room and began to feel it heavily in my head. The best I could describe it is when you go too deep in a pool. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I saw my reflection looking right at me. Not from the other side of the mirror, though. He was right in front of me with a sinister grin on his face. You really fell for that? Literally the dumbest one so far. Anyway, let me explain what's going to happen to you. As he turned away from me and began to wander around the bathroom, his shape began to morph and change in a way I can only describe as mangled. When I realized what had happened, my heart sank. Layered scaly skin began to arise, and pointed spikes that could pierce any flesh began to form. It then turned back to look at me, and I saw nothing. There was no face. I'm going to steal your soul. Usually because I get hungry, but in this case I was just bored. When I realized what had happened, my heart sunk. Also, there's no escape. The creature swiftly grabbed me by the shoulders, and its faceless head pushed right into my face. All I remember is that it felt kind of good, like a tingle you get when you watch an ASMR video. I work in a 7-Eleven. Nothing fancy, but it gets me by while I go to school. I have to deal with my fair share of problems when I work the night shift. Homeless people, drunk people, and that one guy that gives off serial killer vibes. Usually, I spend majority of my shift watching YouTube shorts on my phone, but recently, I've been daydreaming a lot. I'm overweight and poor, so ironically, all of my daydreams are about me being fit and rich. They always end really abruptly, though. It was 3:23 a.m., and I had about 2 more hours till my shift was over. I drank a bit too much Red Bull and used the restroom at work, which I try to never do. As I opened the door and walked into the cramped one toilet and sink restroom, I was shocked at what I saw in the mirror. Nothing. Story 7. I never believed it either. Superstitions like walking under ladders, crossing paths with a black cat, tipping over a salt shaker. Hell, I've never even once passed on any of those chainmails, and I'm still alive. But mirrors, I think that's one superstition I'll have to look into. The last thing I could remember was slamming the door to my room to get away from my parents yelling at me. I had gone and smashed the bathroom mirror last night in anger after finding out my girlfriend cheated on me with my best friend, because his face looks better. I guess I just didn't want to see how pathetic I looked after a reason like that. I probably drifted off to sleep soon after, with a dull pain in my fist and some sweaty eyes. I woke up this morning to the smell of breakfast. The signature sweet, sweet scent of bacon fat, and a woman's voice calling my name. I remember mumbling something to the effect of, 5 more minutes, Mom, before she called back again, louder. Honey, you're going to be late for work. In my groggy state, the words echoed through my head a few more times. Work? What work? She might be real tired saying work instead of school. I chuckled to myself with a slight sense that something was amiss before I finally snapped wide awake in realization. That was not my mother's voice. I sat up in confusion and looked at the room around me. My heart dropped instantly. This was not my bedroom. My familiar blue wall, plastered with Grand Theft Auto posters, was gone and replaced by some plain white wall. My shelf full of action figures was nowhere in sight, replaced by a new bookshelf filled with actual books on them. There was even some big flat-screen TV in front of me, which my parents would never have bought, let alone leave in my room. Panic began to creep up on me as the unfamiliarity of the place slowly sank in. Before I got the chance to collect myself, the door swung open. An unfamiliar older lady walked in and sat down next to me. "Good morning, babe." She leaned in and kissed me before I could move. Ha ha. I kissed some crazy stranger. "Hurry and get ready for work, okay? Who are you?" "Crap," I stuttered. "Is this a new type of play? We've been married for over a year already. Don't be silly." She laughed and gave me a playful look before whispering, "We can continue your little game tonight," and walked back out the door. At that point, I freaked out a little. Married? I'm only 17. This has got to be a joke. I've been kidnapped. Okay, maybe I freaked out more than just a little, but I knew I had to be cautious with my next steps. So I followed instructions. I got up and searched for the bathroom, which thankfully had its door open, so I didn't have to draw attention to myself searching through closed doors. I remember having thought, the mirror isn't broken, to add to the ever-growing list of things that confirmed I was in some random stranger's house. And then I saw myself. It's a funny thing, reflections. Sometimes you see yourself and don't really think about anything, just fix your hair and leave. Then sometimes you stand and stare in the mirror longer, and suddenly things go funny and you're just kind of like, wow, is that really me? I guess what happened when I saw myself in the mirror was neither of the two, because I really could not recognize the person standing in the mirror. It had to be me. I could see traces of me, and yet, not me. Me, but much older. I had a stubble growing in. My hair was neat and nothing like the nest I had before. And my God, my face was clear without any of those puberty breakouts. I was in disbelief, shock. But somehow seeing myself in that mirror seemed to have also calmed me down a little. At that point, my mind was racing through all the sci-fi and conspiracy theories I've read. Time travel? Did I just time travel? It would explain everything, which means I wasn't in some random lady's house, but the future me's. I have a wife. Fear started turning into excitement. The human ability to adapt to crazy scenarios and explain them has never been of more help until that moment. I managed to get dressed and sit down at the dining table for breakfast, where the lady was already eating. "Remember when we first met?" I asked, probing for some information. She squinted at me suspiciously. I was just feeling nostalgic. I guess she accepted that because she suddenly got excited and started going on about how we first met and when we fell in love. Apparently, she walked into me while eating ice cream and got it all over me, and I bought her a new one instead of getting angry, and that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. While she was talking, I spotted a picture frame in the corner of my eye, a wedding photo, so I guess it's true. I watched her as she told our story. I had to admit, she was my type. Maybe it won't be too bad if I just keep this up. But it was definitely weird listening about myself and seeing a photo of me, and yet not me, a me that I cannot remember. My wife drove me to work. Apparently, we usually take turns. On the way there, I poked around on all the new capabilities of my smartphone, comparing it to my old iPhone 4. If I had to comment on the difference, I guess I'd have to say that it seems like size does matter. So this is the future. I glanced the date on my phone and froze. July 14th, 2018. Exactly 7 years ahead in time. There was something unsettling about that number, how exact it was, that I couldn't put my finger on yet. I shook off the feeling and drifted off into thought as I watched my wife drive. In this length of time that I missed, I wonder who was the me that took over, and what happened to them. Upon pulling up at the building, my wife kissed me goodbye again. I kissed a stranger, twice. I entered my office and was greeted by a whole bunch of strangers I guess I work with. After sitting at a whole bunch of wrong desks and sheepishly apologizing and pretending I was just joking around, I finally found my desk and sat down. One of my coworkers came up to me almost immediately afterwards. "Hey dude, not performing your morning ritual today?" I stared at him confused. A few others laughed from around us. "You know, your mirror cleaning ritual." I stared at him. Mirrors. Somehow, I didn't like where this was going. "Damn, you look real tired today. You all right?" The office was suddenly quiet. I could feel everyone's gaze on me. Did they notice? I had to act normal. There's no way anyone would believe me if I said something crazy like time traveling. And I didn't want to be alone and ostracized in the new world I was suddenly thrown into. "Yeah, sorry, just tired. I totally just forgot. Going to clean now." I laughed nervously and stumbled to get up and out of there. "Just blend in," I told myself. "Careful not to break it. That's 7 years of bad luck." Someone called out. Everyone laughed again. The tension in the room seemed to go away as everyone resumed what they were doing. Exactly 7 years. The unsettling feeling from the car ride came back instantly. I felt sick to my stomach. I got out of there quickly and ran to find a bathroom. After splashing cold water on my face a few times, I stared at myself in the mirror once more and tried to calm down. This is my new life now. There's no going back. I willed myself to accept the situation. I thought back to what the guy said before and how I smashed that mirror just yesterday. 7 years of bad luck. "Haha, there's no way that's related," I said aloud. "What if it isn't time travel?" I suppressed my thoughts. Regardless of what it was, I had to resign myself to my fate and steel myself to get used to the new situation. At least, I won't have to sit through boring classes anymore. I took one last big sigh. All right, I can do this. I smiled weakly at myself. Or at least I thought I did, because my reflection did not smile back. Story 8. Have you ever experienced mirrorception? You know, when you put two mirrors together and the reflections just keep going and going like an endless loop of your own image. As a kid, I was always fascinated by this phenomenon, but my parents' bathroom, with its two identical sides opposite each other, only allowed me to see a limited number of reflections before my own body blocked the center. But today, I finally had the chance to satisfy my curiosity. I constructed a contraption with two mirrors facing each other, placed a lamp above them to provide adequate lighting, and cut a small hole in the center to place my phone camera behind. Initially it was cool, but the center was still blocked off. I then set up my higher quality camera to capture the images and used a one-way mirror instead to look into the infinite reflection. As I zoomed in on the images, I couldn't help but feel like I was peering into a portal that stretched out into infinity. The reflections slowly became clearer and clearer, but the further they got, the darker they appeared. In the center, I noticed a small black square that looked like a tiny dot. I was about to turn off the camera when a thought occurred to me. What if I just let it keep recording? Maybe I could edit the footage and create something that would go viral on the internet. That night, I went to bed feeling content with my work. However, I was abruptly awakened by a feeling of intense heat and choking on thick smoke. As I sat up, I could see the flicker of flames in the darkness, and the smell of burning plastic filled the air. Panic set in, and I scrambled out of bed and made my way to the living room. To my horror, the entire room was ablaze. The TV screen flickered wildly as it burned, and the smell was overpowering. I was frozen in shock for a minute before I finally snapped out of it and began gathering my most valuable possessions. Once outside, I dialed the emergency services and waited in a daze as the fire was put out. Afterward, I assumed that the camera had been responsible for the fire. It must have overheated during its prolonged recording and caught on fire. The guilt and regret of my recklessness weighed heavily on my mind. Days later, as the smoke removal experts cleaned up the aftermath, I decided to review the footage from that night. As I watched the images on the screen, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Something was off about the video. It wasn't just the fire. There was something else, something strange lurking in the reflection. As I scrutinized the footage, my heart began to race. Suddenly, I noticed something that hadn't been there before, a figure standing in the center of the black square. The figure was so blurry that it was difficult to make out, but its presence was undeniable. As I continued to watch, the figure grew clearer and clearer until it was standing directly in front of the camera, its eyes fixed on me. I sat there in horror. I know it couldn't actually see me, but I was still terrified. This can't be real, I repeated in my mind. I scratched my head, noticing that the figure repeated that movement. I waved my hand around and dropped the camera in shock. The figure had been repeating my every move, just like a mirror. It had to be some coincidence, or a prank, or I was hallucinating. I slowly picked up the camera. The mirrors around the figure looked like they were melting, liquefying, but not entirely dripping down, just getting bouncier. I noticed as more figures splashed through, the camera getting completely covered by the mirror liquid. The audio for the camera was this ghastly gurgling sound. It felt like it was haunting my ears. I wanted to put the camera down, but I was just too horrified. I could only sit and listen, staring at the distorted screen as I heard the demonic sounds and a crackling, which I assumed to be the fire starting. That was when I had enough. I stopped watching and put the camera down. I was too shocked to understand what to do, and that night I wasn't able to sleep until pretty late. My mind filled with the scenery of the footage. When I got home, I destroyed what remained of the contraption and erased the footage, knowing that I couldn't ever bring myself to peer into that endless reflection again. I've been super weary around any mirrors for a while, although it's been pretty silent since then. But the memory of what I had seen still haunts me to this day, and I can't help but wonder what other dark secrets lurk in the depths of the infinite portals. Sometimes, I still think I hear a gurgling echoing through my house in the depths of the night.